DawgNation, and welcome into DawgNation at Large. I'm Kaylee Mansell, and this week we have Cody Chaffins in place of Connor Riley because Connor is on vacation. And in the past, when I have been on vacation, there's usually some sly comment that's made about me being gone, but I'm not going to do that.
Look at you. That's called growth, right? You're not going to throw Connor under the bus for not showing up for his job and just taking off?
Well, the thing is I genuinely hope he's enjoying his vacation. We all kind of need that time before the season starts. So, no, I'm going to step up, be the young, respectable woman that I am, and wish Connor Riley a very happy vacation.
What do you think he's doing right now? Is he on the beach somewhere?
My spidey senses are telling me that he's eating a hot dog right now.
I could see that. He will probably post it on Instagram, whatever it is. We will find out.
But he will be back next week for SEC Media Days. And really quick on that subject, just because it keeps coming up all over my social media, it's the fact that next week is not just SEC Media Days, but the city of Atlanta is going to be a zoo.
Insane.
Beyonce here for 4 nights, and you've got the all-star stuff happening at Truist. Like, if you don't live in the city, just try to avoid it as much as you can because traffic is going to be insane.
There's a big wrestling event this weekend.
Oh,
There's a K-pop group in town tonight. There's so much going on. Home Run Derby. It's going to be a fun time. And it's the second year in a row SEC Media Days has been in the same city, at least Dallas, Arlington, the same city, as the MLB All-Star Game and SEC Media Days in the same spot. Kind of strange. I haven't looked up where the All-Star Game is next year. Where might we be going for SEC Media Days?
Yeah, if there's any one thing that you should take away from this show today, it's if you're not attending any of those events or you don't already live in the city of Atlanta, just stay away for your own benefit. And that's what we do here on DawgNation at Large.
It's the show for the new breed of Georgia Bulldog fan. This is DawgNation at Large with DawgNation insiders Connor Riley and Kaylee Mansell.
And I just want to say a quick shout out to Cody. I'm very grateful that even when Connor's not here, I have somebody that I feel like I can trust, you know?
I appreciate you saying that.
I truly
I'm glad
mean
to hear. I thought there was something else coming, but I appreciate that.
And there's a chance that there may be a Kaylee Connor showdown next week, and if that's the case, just
look
keep
at you.
those kind
That's
words
what
in
it
mind.
is. You're buttering me up. I love it.
All right, so here's what we've got going on today's episode. We are going to do our final preseason position grades because once Media Days happens, then fall camp is right after that. So this is our final judgment based on what we know about each group. Then we will finish up our Dog Bite segment, which over the last couple of weeks, we've been doing the most important players of each class. We're going to wrap it up this week with the most important players of the 2025 class. We'll follow it up with our favorite memes of the week. And then we're going to do, I'm going to call it SEC Media Days bingo. There's no bingo card that's involved, but Cody and I are each going to give 5 sayings, phrases, or mentions, say that 10 times fast, that we think could come up in next week's SEC Media Days, and hopefully it'll fill out our bingo card.
All right,
so we'll go ahead and start with the quarterbacks. You've got Gunnar Stockton, Ryan Puglisi, then you also add Ryan Montgomery and Hezekiah Millender, but for me, this is actually going to be the lowest grade out of all of the offensive positions. I'm going to give him a C+, and it's not because I don't think that Gunnar Stockton is going to be an efficient, good quarterback for this offense. It's just so hard to give a higher grade when there's virtually no experience in this group apart from Gunnar. I think if Ryan Puglisi had any more real game time experience, I could go a little bit higher, but the fact that Gunnar's only got a little bit and everybody behind him has none, you can't really place any higher of a grade on the group.
Yeah, that's the hard thing about these preseason grades because it's not really graded off what you've done. It's kind of how we feel about these groups so far. And I was right there with you with that quarterback group. And I said a C because I think it's kind of average, right? A lot of times in school, C's make degrees, and that's all we need. So you just have to be average if you're Gunnar Stockton. Just don't cost Georgia the game. Don't be a D or an F student. Go out there, be a C student. That's just fine for what Georgia needs you to be this year. It's not, going into last year, we would have probably put A on Carson Beck, and he had nothing but disappointment after that, but he couldn't do anything but disappoint you if you had an A preseason grade. With Gunnar Stockton, we give him a preseason C. All he can do is impress us, right? As long as he doesn't turn the ball over, give the ball away, lose Georgia football games, just be consistent, hold on to the football. That's all we need. Georgia just needs a C at quarterback this year. They've proven what they can do with C's at quarterback before. Not to, call out anybody, but I don't think 2021 Stetson Bennett was a world beater. He wasn't a game changer. He just was consistent. Now, he made some plays when plays needed to be made, especially, I think, back to the national championship game, but he also had moments where they weren't so great. So I think with a C quarterback, you're in fine shape.
I think you make an interesting point because this isn't a group that needs to have an A, maybe a B. C+ would still be okay because of the groups around him having better grades, including the next one here, which is going to be the pass catchers. So we're going to group tight ends and wide receivers into this category. When you look at returning contributors, you've got 5. Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, Dylan Bell. I included London Humphreys in this because he did have some impact plays last season. And then we're also going to throw Colby Young in there as well. Then you add Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch to the transfer portal, who have added a lot of excitement to this group. And then when you look at the freshmen tight ends, Ethan Barbour, Elias Williams, wide receivers, probably one of the stronger wide receiver groups that Georgia has brought in recent memory. Talon Taylor, CJ Wiley, Landon Roldan, Tyler J. Williams, and Thomas Blackshear. But also not included in what you see on your screen here, it's guys who could play a bigger role, who have already been in the program, maybe didn't get a lot of playing time last year, but it's guys like Sokovi White and Jaden Riddell that I think add to this group. So I'm going to give the pass catchers an A-.
An A-?
I know. That's aiming high. I know. Okay, just hear me out on this,
okay,
right?
All right.
Heavily benefited from the transfer portal and also the freshman additions and finally picking up a 5-star receiver in Talon Taylor. I also am very high on what CJ Wiley can bring in, even as a freshman. There's a lot of returners like Delp, Dylan Bell, who I think are going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder just because of how bad things were last year. I want to aim high because I want to manifest that this year is going to be different. And here's the good thing is they don't have to do very much to take a big leap from where they're at last year.
Yeah.
But clearly Georgia saw an issue, addressed it, brought in 2 monsters in Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch. So I'm going A-. You can call me crazy, but I will stand 10 toes down.
So we got the pass catchers as a whole, right? So you got wide receivers and tight ends. I think tight ends, that's an A group no matter what. Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky, Jaden Riddell. Even if they can't get it done, I believe in Ethan Barbour and Elias Williams probably could. So that's an A group for me. And the wide receivers, though, is where I'm going to downgrade a little bit. And partially because I'm jaded from last year. Dylan Bell with 6 drops last year. How is he going to be better in 2025? You got to show it to me first. Colby Young, we feel like that's a great contribution coming back. But you look at what Colby Young actually did last year. His high watermark was 3 catches for 57 yards against Alabama. So he doesn't had a 100-yard receiving game for Georgia yet. So you got to show me a little bit right there. And just because Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch, I just got to see the chemistry. I got to see it as a transfer getting right into this offense. What can you do? So for me, the wide receivers were kind of a C, and you got the tight ends who are kind of an A. So we'll say B, B-. For the pass catchers for me. That's plenty of room to grow. There's a lot of upside that could be there, but I've just got to see it. And part of it is just the shivers I get, the chills I get from last season.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of PTSD for Georgia fans. As soon as somebody drops the ball, it's going to be...
You saw it on G-Day. Yeah. One guy drops the ball, and they're like, here we go again. And it's like, whoa. Like, we did that with the cleanse, right? Can we leave that in the past? But it's hard. It's hard to leave it in the past.
I have a hard time believing that this is something that Kirby Smart hasn't had this group practice on over and over and over. We even saw a little bit last year during the Sugar Bowl where they had Arian Smith catching tennis balls. Like, I don't see them just like letting this go away. I feel like they had to do extra work on actually catching passes in this offseason. And
I think a different quarterback, different throws, it may be different as well.
All right, so let's talk about the running backs. Returning contributors, you've got Nate Frazier and Cash Jones. You bring in Joshua McCray from Illinois, as well as Micah Bell from the transfer portal, and then you just bring in 1 freshman.
But what a freshman.
Yeah, exactly. And then let's also talk about the guys that could potentially play a bigger role. We saw a little bit of Dwight Phillips and Chauncey Bowens last year, not that much. And then also Roderick Robinson, who it's hard to even rope him into this category because we have seen so little little of them. Based on all of these things, Cody, what would you give the running backs?
So for me, I gave running backs a B. Nate Frazier obviously had the fumbling issues a year ago that has to get cleaned up. But you bring back Cash Jones, I don't think he gets talked about enough about what he can do in the leadership, the senior leadership he can bring to this group. He's, of course, we could almost add him into the pass catchers because he's almost more of a pass catcher than he is a running back at times for Georgia. But I like bringing in Josh McCray. Rod Robinson, we don't really know about, but what we saw from the spring from Bo Walker and how everybody's talking about him right now, he looks like he's going to be a contributor on this team. So I go B with the running backs.
I also am going to go a B with this group. Bringing back Nate Frazier is huge and is one of the most exciting running backs that we've seen in a while. But apart from Cash Jones and Nate Frazier, there's very little Georgia SEC experience with this group. I think bringing in McCray was a power move because he does add a lot of versatility to the group. I'm just not exactly sure how or if they even plan to use Chauncey Bowens and Dwight Phillips Jr. by bringing him in. I'm really excited about Bo Walker. However, I can't go higher on this group because I do wish they would have brought in one more running back in the class.
Yeah, the depth is something at this running back position that has just plagued Georgia the last couple of years. It's so many Robinsons being hurt, standing on the sidelines, but just injuries have added up. Kendall Milton missed a lot of time in 23. Obviously, the guy's missing last year. So that's one of those things. Depth could come to bite you, and that's, for me, why I put them at a B.
I think that you could also throw our next position group into that category as well, which is going to be the offensive line. Look at returning contributors: Monroe Freeling, Micah Morris, Ernest Green, and now Drew Bobo too. They added Walt Clear Flynn from the transfer portal, but that's not one of the transfer guys that we've talked about hardly at all this season, just because we don't expect him to be a contributor at all. Then you bring in 5 freshmen and 1 Gaston: Mason Short, Dennis Uzuchukwu, Cortez Smith, and Dontrell Glover, who will be here for the fall. I'm going B- because this is a group that knows that they have to take a massive step forward. They allowed 1.79 sacks per game, which was the most of any Georgia offensive line since 2016. The problem is you lose 4 starters, but you do bring back some contributors. It's definitely one of the less experienced offensive lines that we've seen in a while, but I think the fact that Georgia only added 1 portal player who's probably not going to play at all, I think that's a good sign because it tells you that if Kirby Smart really thought this group was an issue, he would have made a bigger demand to try to go get offensive linemen out of the portal.
Yeah, it's one of those from afar. I think a lot of national media outlets have said, well, Georgia lost 3 guys who went in the first 3 rounds of the NFL draft. They must be down at offensive line. And I think there is a lot of optimism with this group. The signs we saw from Drew Bobo, the times he had to play in 2024, he looked really good. He's got that nasty streak, which I love to see in an offensive lineman. He's going to finish blocks, play to the echo of the whistle. I love that about Drew Bobo. Obviously, he knows the offense. Then you got guys like Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green. Now, everybody says after the fact, oh, they were hurt last year. But I still got to see it make a step forward. For some guys, like Xavier Truss, we saw him on the Georgia offensive line year after year after year. Mm-hmm. Now, and everybody assumed every year, well, he's been there longer, so he's going to be better. That's not always the case. He didn't all of a sudden become in his last year an all-SEC player. No, just because you're older doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be better. So while you have guys who have been around this program a lot, Ernest Green has played a lot, Monroe Freeling, Micah Morris has played a ton, but Micah Morris last year wasn't better than Tate Ratledge or Dylan Fairchild. So I don't know that we can expect him this year to be better than Dylan Fairchild or Tate Ratledge was a year ago. So there's a lot of optimism because there are guys who have been around the program for a while, but it's another one where you got to kind of show me. And of course, you're going to be breaking a new guard in this year no matter what. It looks like it'll be Daniel Calhoun. So it's kind of an unknown there. I think there's a lot of potential, a lot of room to grow. And, you know, you got guys who could potentially be first round NFL picks, but they hadn't shown it so far. So I'm going to go C+ based on the way last year ended for Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green. Hopefully they're more healthy and they're better this year. But for me, C+ for that group.
Where I think Kirby Smart can really be Kirby Smart here is he's so good at taking the negative things that are said about certain position groups and being like, you hear that? That's what they think about you. So much negativity towards the offensive line at the end of last year, and I'm sure we're not the only ones who feel this way about the offensive line. A lot
of Georgia fans are worried.
So you know he's going to take all that, spin it around, show it to them. So this is another group kind of similar to the pass catchers where I feel like they're just going to play with a bigger chip on their shoulder. All right, now we'll move to the other side of the line of scrimmage. Let's talk about the defensive linemen. I had a pretty hard time grading this group. I feel like I have to go the same route as I did with the offensive line because they're in very similar positions. I'm going to go B-. Returning contributors, you've got Christian Miller, Xavier McLeod. They do add Joshua Horton in the portal, but similar to Walt Claire Flynn, I don't expect him to play a huge role in this line. And then they bring in 2 freshmen, and Elijah Griffin and J.J. Hane, which are on 2 totally different ends of the spectrum. J.J. Hane was actually the lowest graded player in the 2025 class versus Elijah Griffin, who was the highest rated player in the 2025 class. All in all, I think the coming back of Christian Miller is so important because just like the offensive line, it is very inexperienced. However, where I think this group can actually exceed expectations is with the guys who are expected to play a bigger role. Guys like Jordan Hall, Joseph Jonah-Ajonye, Nazir Johnson. Even though we haven't seen that much of them, I think that those 3 guys altogether have a very high upside.
So what's your grade?
I'm going to go B-. Same thing with the offensive line.
Even for me, that sounds high. And the reason is, like, offensive line, you can get away with playing your 5 guys all year. Defensive line, you're going to play 5 guys per series and then maybe 6 and maybe 7. Like, they're going to roll in and out. You're going to have a lot of guys playing in that position. So for me, the depth is an issue. Christian Miller coming back was huge. You kind of saw how Georgia felt about the position by some of the big name defensive tackles they were kind of linked to in the transfer portal. Like, they were trying to get some guys because you got to have Joseph Jonah-Ajonye step up big this year. You got to have Nazir Johnson step up big. Now, to be his credit, Johnson had a sack on G-Day. He does look the part. Elijah Griffin, who we'll talk about more in this show, is going to have to come in and play because depth seems to be an issue for me. So defensive line, I'm going to go D just because D for depth is a question mark. And they're going to have to show me a little bit this year.
Is that as low as your grading goes?
Yes.
Wow.
But
it was tough, though.
You could, because And the other part is, like, Christian Miller gets hurt last year. If you got Xavier McLeod missed multiple games last year, you guys hurt, it's going to get real tough real fast for the defensive line group.
Yeah, and that's when you start looking at that freshman group as not only having two in the class. Elijah Griffin is probably going to be one of the ones that plays immediately, but there's not much behind that.
Nnamdi Ogboko needs to be ready to go.
All right, so let's talk about the edge group. I gave them a C. The only, and like you could probably go lower than that too. The only returning contributor who really didn't even play that much last year was Gabe Harris. You bring in Elo Mendoza from the transfer portal, but doesn't have the SEC experience. We haven't seen him hardly at all, so it's hard to judge what kind of player he's going to be. Now, where I give this group some grace is with the freshman class with Isaiah Gibson, Darren Ikenabong, who was a top 100 player, as well as Chase Linton. I think it's similar to the quarterback argument. It's hard to judge what you haven't seen enough of, but the person I'm most excited for out of the entire outside linebacker / edge room is Quintavious Johnson.
Yeah, I would love to see him kind of step up and have his moment. He's shown some signs. The thing that worries me about this group is obviously the departure of Damon Harris is a big one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, not going to be there, so you're going to have to depend on some guys. You lose Michael Williams. You lose guys coming off the edge. So this group for me is a D. You're asking a guy like Gabe Harris to go do something he's never done, right? Like, go out there and be the number one. He didn't even have to be the number 2 last year. So that is a big worry for me. Again, depth is an issue. If Elo Mendoza works out, incredible. If he can be what he was at Army, great. But you got to do it when the bullets are flying in the SEC, and we just haven't seen it. So I don't feel great. You group that whole defensive line of scrimmage together, and I just don't have great feelings about it. But it's, it's still Kirby Smart, and it's still his defense. Mm-hmm. They're going to get something accomplished. But for me, that's just my personal feelings going into the season.
So the edge was my lowest graded group on the defense. Now we're going to go to the highest rated one, which for me is the cornerbacks. And that could be something that comes back to bite me in the you-know-what. But I am Dalen Everett's number one stan right now. Between him and Daniel Harris, that's a lot of experience playing time coming back. They don't bring in anyone in the transfer portal, but that's the thing. They didn't need to because they have 3 really strong sophomores in in Ellis Robinson, DeMello Jones, as well as Andre Evans, who we haven't had the chance to talk about that much, but the depth at that position, the fact that there's more than likely still an ongoing position battle that's happening, and also, too, from what we saw on G-Day between the two freshmen in Jonte Gilbert and Dominic Kelly, this position is so much further along than it was last year, because there were times when Dalen Everett and Julian Humphrey were the only two that played at all. Like the Kentucky game, those were the only two guys that played. So the fact that they have more options this year and so much untapped potential, this is my highest rated group.
So for me, this one is hard to read because when you ask Kirby Smart about Daniel Harris, a lot of the times what you're hearing, he's not over the top gushing. And so I'm like, does that mean he's a little worried and he don't want to talk up his guy? Or does that mean he's just tough on cornerbacks? And of course, we know Kirby Smart is a secondary safeties type of guy. We've seen him really get on Dalen Everett over the years because Dalen's played a lot of football, and that's a good reason to feel good about him the way he finished last year. So Daniel Harris, to me, it's like, is he not gushing because he's worried, or is he not gushing because he just wants to keep pushing him and get him to his best? Daniel Harris, remember last year, that was the guy we all thought was going to break out. He was going to have a huge year. Now, he did have the interception on G-Day, which is really nice ball skills kind of going over his shoulder, so excited about that. But we'll see, and we'll see what Ellis Robinson has to bring this year. I went with the cornerback group of B, which, again, I'm kind of a pessimistic critic here.
Yeah.
So all the grades are a little bit lower than probably optimistic Georgia fans are. But B for this group, I think, is solid. And maybe it's just my schooling background. Like, B was good.
Yeah.
A is like untouchable. So B for me is very good, very confident in this
I guess I'm like the cool substitute teacher that you're hoping to see, and Cody's the one that you're like, eh.
Yeah, I'm getting the what's the review your teacher after the thing?
Oh
I
my
get the
God,
bad
rate my
reviews.
professor.
There you go. Yes.
I have some deep lore into rate my professor. We're not going to get into that. Instead, we will get into the safeties, which I gave a B.
Yep.
Here's the thing. You bring back KJ Bolden. You also have Ja'Cory Thomas, who did have a significant amount of playing time last year. And then I'm going to throw Janelle Aguero into this category too, even though we didn't get to see as much of him as we would have wanted. With him being such a formerly high-rated recruit, I have high hopes for what Janelle Aguero will bring. The problem is look, it's going to be impossible to replace the experience and the talent that Malachi Starks and Dan Jackson had, just because they had those spots in lockdown for so long. But KJ Bolden is the future. They add in 3 people in the portal, and Zion Branch, Adrian Maddox, and Jaden Harris, and then you add 3 freshmen to this group as well. The transfers are what throw me off, because it's like, are you not confident in that what you had already, or is it just like, we're going to take this room and we're going to upgrade it as much as we can? So bringing in 3 transfers is where I'm not sure how I can grade this group. Again, I gave him a B, but it's like, did he do that to maximize the group, or did we just not feel great about what we had already?
I think part of me is like, we're just going to throw numbers at it, right? One of these guys is going to work out and be good. I actually feel really good about this group as well. They're getting one of my highest grades, a B, coming off, because I like KJ and Janelle Aguero. I like what they've done. I think KJ, I would love to see. Again, you can't always assume because the guy's another year in the program, he's going to be better because of it. So a guy like Janelle Aguero, who's been around for a long time, but can you take the next? We haven't seen him healthy for a full year. Mm-hmm. So I would like you see the club he had on his left hand last year. So would it feel good about seeing him on the field? Even Ja'Cory Thomas, a guy like that's played a lot of football right now. Zion Branch and Adrian Maddox, I think, can get out there and make a difference. So excited about this group. I think they'll be pretty solid, which, if you're going to not have guys getting pass rush in the front, which we're worried about, at least have guys who can cover them on the back end.
All right, so we'll do our last group, which is going to be the linebackers. And with the way that Georgia seems to reload in the linebacker room, I didn't feel like I couldn't give them anything else other than an A. I'm going to say A- because you are replacing some big names from that group. But when you look at what Georgia's got coming back, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, who this is their 3rd year, having real game time experience. And you also bring in Chris Cole, who as a freshman was able to make his way into what was a stacked room and still stood out at moments. Then you've got the guy who everybody's been talking about this offseason because didn't really get to see him last year, but the role that he's going to play this year brings a lot of excitement, and that's Justin Williams. They didn't need to add anybody in the transfer portal because of the talent that was already there.
And then the 5-star.
Yeah, and then you've got the 5-star linebacker Zayden Walker who's coming in, as well as AJ Crua. So just the way that Georgia's able to reload this group and the leadership and the jumps that I expect CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson to take, I mean, you can't really go any lower than A-.
No, I went A.
Oh,
This is an A group
That's how
for
you
me.
know.
So even for the hard group, this is like the tight ends on the offensive side of the ball. This is a group where you've got so many good players. How can we all get them all on the field is the big question. You do lose the Butkus Award winner, right? Like, it's hard to get an A when you lost Jalen Walker off of this group. But I think CJ Allen, I think the fact that Kirby Smart invited CJ Allen to be the spokesman at SEC Media Days tells us what Kirby thinks about him. That's a good sign. Raylan Wilson's played a lot of football. He's going to be right in there mixing it up. He can be a green dot guy who can get folks lined up as well. Now, the question is, can the defensive line keep everybody off of them? Can they get blockers free so they can go make tackles? I do like, we worried about the edge. I do like the idea of how can we figure out Chris Cole and Justin Williams getting after quarterbacks a little bit?
Yeah.
Can we figure out ways? Because I think Kirby Smart will do that. When you look at, they're not silly, right? They know what they have. And if they think their edge rusher getting pressure is an issue, well, then they're going to find out other ways. They've spent all offseason figuring out other ways to get pressures. And some things they'll disguise, I'm sure, until a Texas comes up or an Alabama. That might see some unique looks and ways to get pressure that you won't necessarily have to show when you play Austin Peay or Marshall.
So you were pretty tough in your gradings. When you look at the list that you have in front of you at the end of the season, which is the one that you think can prove you wrong the most?
I think the defensive line has a definite chance to do that. They have plenty and the offensive line. Those two for me, because we just didn't feel great about, and Kirby Smart said it the whole offseason, right? Stopping the run and running the football is where we have to get better. I expect him to talk a lot about it at SEC Media Days. And if that's the place they're going to have to be better, that's the place where those groups have room to grow. So defensive line, prove me that you're better than a D group, and can you stay healthy? Can you make tackles throughout the year? Offensive line, can you show me that 2024 and the way that ended was an aberration? Let's do it.
All right, so coming up, we will do the most important players of the 2025 class. And as Cody mentioned, there are some things that Kirby Smart tends to say over and over and over. So we're going to try to predict some of those for SEC Media Days that will take place next week. But first, we want to remind you that here on DawgNation at Large, we are always so thankful to partner with Zagoria Law Firm. And what makes Zagoria Law Firm so unique is that they are the only law firm in the state that specializes in representing people bitten by dogs, as well as those who have been knocked down by dogs. Not only are they the official dog bite injury lawyers of the Georgia Bulldogs, but one reason that we recommend them is because no matter where you are in the state, whether that's North Georgia or South Georgia, Zagoria Law can get in touch with you. So no matter where you are, if something like this happens to you, if you or someone else has been hurt by someone else's dog, you can rely on Zagoria Law. And to get in touch with them, you can call them at 833-GA-DOG-BITE. That's DOGBITE, or visit ZagoriaLaw.com. Now we'll do dog bites. So we are wrapping up our series on the most important players of each and every class, and now we are down to the true freshmen. So a lot of it's opinion, it's speculation, it's preseason hype, and I don't think there's been any player in this class that's had more preseason hype than Elijah Griffin, of course, the highest rated recruit in this class. 6'5", 285, physical tools that you rarely ever see in a freshman. But here's the thing, despite the size, moves like a much smaller player, can play just about anywhere in the scheme, and due to the lack of depth at the defensive line that we were talking about earlier, there's a really good chance that he's going to contribute early, which is rare for players at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, especially on the defensive or, like you said, offensive side of the ball. See those guys get thrown in straight out of high school as a true freshman is really strange, but there's no question Elijah Griffin has the size to do it. I think about Elijah Griffin. Here's what I'm thinking about. How can he make an impact? Because I think he's going to play because of there's not a ton of depth on the defensive line. We've seen so many injuries. Georgia plays a tough schedule. Guys are going to get banged up, and Elijah's going to have to get out there. So I was kind of going through the numbers, and I've done this for all these freshmen here. What can we expect? So if he's like the 5th defensive lineman on the chart right now, which is not bad, what would we get at? Jamal Jarrett was that guy last year. Only had 3 tackles as a sophomore. Okay. Jordan Hall, though, as a freshman back in 2023, played 177 snaps, 7 tackles, 8 quarterback hurries. Would we be happy with that? Bear Alexander, 2022. 11 quarterback pressures, had a sack as a freshman. To me, that's about where we would expect Elijah Griffin to hang out. Give me some quarterback pressures, give me a couple big sacks and big moments, and we'll see what you got.
What I like about him is that he's a potential game changer. If he can find a way to stay healthy and adapt quickly to the level of physicality that's in the SEC, I think we're going to see him get more experience as the season goes on, and he could be one of the key reasons that in the future the Georgia defense stays elite.
Yeah, I wonder, because you and Jeff do such a great job on Before the Hedges profiling these guys, we get to see Elijah Griffin. And he seems like such a nice guy. And he's played at single A football at Savannah Christian. I want to see a mean streak and see when he gets on the field in an SEC game, does he have that, mean streak? Can he get out there and dominate a little bit? That's the part I have not seen yet from him.
So someone who I feel like is in a similar position to Elijah Griffin is the next guy on our list, which is Isaiah Gibson, because there is a lack of depth at the edge room. I mean, a 5-star edge, Kirby Smart's going to find a way to utilize him some way, somehow, especially in those first 2 games where it's not a gauntlet of an SEC schedule. 6'4", 240 pounds, super freaky athleticism. He's long, twitchy, powerful, exactly the kind of frame that Georgia loves to develop into a future NFL draft pick. Don't be surprised if he ends up becoming one of the defining defensive players of this entire 2025 class.
Yeah, he can get out there. He's big enough to go ahead and play, too. Again, played pretty big football at Warner Robins, so feel good about that. The comps I had, all right, so if he's like the 5th edge rusher going into the season, could he be what Gabe Harris was for Georgia last year, give you 3 sacks? Although Gabe Harris was a sophomore at that time. Could he be Marvin Jones in 23, give you a sack and 5 hurries as a sophomore? Now, the guy we would love for him to be is Jalen Walker. I think back to 2022, 13 pressures. He had a sack as a freshman. Could come in and make a difference. I think he can come in, and we will be calling his name on Saturday afternoons. Look out for Isaiah Gibson.
So when it comes to the next guy, unlike Isaiah Gibson and Elijah Griffin, I don't anticipate Talon Taylor to make an early impact just because of how much depth there is in the wide receiver room. However, this is the 5-star wide receiver that the Georgia fans have been desperately wanting since we've seen other rival schools have their own. But I don't think that they're just going to let Talon Taylor ride the bench all year. They're going to have different maybe a play or 2 here and there where they can get him involved, because what I think that he adds to this group, he's not a Colby Young or a Noah Thomas that's just like so long that you can get those 50-50 balls in the end zone. If you go back and watch his high school tape, where he really excelled was yards after catch, which is not something that Georgia really had last year. So I think that's what he brings to the table. They're going to find a way to get him the ball in some scenarios that leave people guessing.
Yeah, and wide receiver is a spot where you're going to play a lot of guys. And we talked about the pass catchers earlier, right? You got Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas, Colby Young, London Humphreys, Dylan Bell. They're all going to be on the field before Talon Taylor does, just because of the experience they have in this offense and the relationship they've built with Gunnar Stockton. So how does Talon add to the offense? I think the low end, what did a freshman do last year? Kobe White had 4 catches, but I think he's going to be better than that. I think he'll be higher than that. Anthony Evans, a guy like that, could he be a role player like that this year? 9 catches on 110 snaps as a sophomore. I think he could. 2023, Arian Smith, who was about that 7th wide receiver, had 8 catches, but made the most of them, had 2 touchdowns. Mekhi Muse, 13 catches back in 2023 as a redshirt sophomore. So that's where I think he kind of fits in. Can he make the most? That was the thing he did so well in high school, is they made the most of every catch. What was his crazy percentage of balls caught versus touchdowns? Like, he took it to the house most of the time. So if he can take advantage of that, he can make a huge impact this year. It is just harder to get on the field with those wide receiver groups because there's so many guys ahead of him.
All right, so next we're going to talk about the offensive tackle, Juan Gaston. When I think about Juan Gaston, he is everything that Kirby Smart looks for in an offensive lineman. Massive size, the SEC level physicality. I mean, if you're watching on video, I mean, it is very evident. I mean, he's the fence. Like, his head is over the fence. There's a lot of long-term upside that comes with Juan Gaston, and with the roster changes up front, I think he could get in the mix much sooner than expected. He may not be the flashiest freshman in this group, but in terms of building an offensive line that can help Georgia to a title contending roster later on, I think he's one of the most valuable of this group.
I think, it's like Elijah Griffin. He's big enough, and Isaiah Gibson. He's big enough to contribute now, which is a good thing. And I think the thing we always have to keep in mind, too, with the lack of depth that Kirby Smart complains about, more of these guys are going to have to be ready to play as a freshman. And we heard so many good things about Juan Gaston in spring practice. It feels like he is one of those guys who's going to be ready to step up. And the other thing about Georgia that not every team does is they'll roll through some offensive tackles throughout a game. We saw it last year, multiple guys getting in at some of those spots. Micah Morris, even though he wasn't a starter, did play a lot last year, and partly because of injury, but Georgia would just roll those guys in for a series. So can he be that third offensive tackle that Georgia would need? Now, Bo Hughley and Ja Jackson will have something to say about that, but can he get past those guys this fall and work his way up? Because I think he can get in there and get some time this year. It'd be a great thing if he gets in and gets some snaps this year. I don't think Georgia's – ideally – you don't have to depend on him if Ernest Green and Monroe Freeland can stay healthy. But if even if those guys need a blow, or you get these first couple games in the heat when you get hopefully some blowout wins, maybe this guy gets in there and gets some snaps and proves what he can do.
So last one on the list is going to be the running back Bo Walker. And here's the thing: is like, if you heard any buzz about Bo Walker this spring and you're like, why? Because he's a 3-star running back. I mean, I understand that.
Out of Raven Gap Nakuchi School,
exactly.
if you just look at the roster, right?
But if you have seen Bo Walker play high school football at all, you can understand why there's hype around him. Did play for Raven Gap his senior year, but in the years before that, he played for Cedar Grove, which was an absolute powerhouse of a high school program. At the time, they were only in the 3A classification, but would purposely schedule teams like Buford and Milton, who
going
were
around the country,
double their size. That way they could prepare their players not just for the postseason, but also for the next level of football. I mean, they were shipping guys off to places all over the country at the D1 level. So Bo Walker, he's the only running back in this class, so they're going to have to rely on him a lot, but he's definitely has the experience at the high school level to make an impact early on in this running back group.
Yeah, when we talked about the offensive and defensive line, we said it's really hard to get on the football field as a freshman on the offensive and defensive line, especially in the SEC. That is not the case at running back. We saw it last year with Nate Frazier. First game, he had 83 yards and a touchdown. And none of that, we're not putting any of this on Bo Walker that he has to do any of this, but it just goes to show you. And Nate Frazier was a summer enrollee, by the way.
Yeah.
Bo Walker had a spring practice under his belt. So there's no limit to what you can do as a freshman running back for Georgia, and that's good news. So excited to see what Bo Walker – and we saw how much Georgia thought of him, how much he got the ball in the G-Day game. They're feeding him the ball, seeing what he can do. I think he's one of those who could make maybe the biggest impact of these 2025 guys, because he's going to play probably more snaps than any of them will.
All right, so still to come, we'll do our favorite memes of the week and our SEC Media Days bingo, which I'm really excited for. But we want to remind you that, listen, we've got a big broadcast coming up here on DawgNation this Saturday between 4 and 4:30. It's going to be the commitment decision for the 5-star tight end Caden Prothro. It's one of the few and final decisions that are being made that could bring Georgia another 5-star in the 2026 class. DawgNation will be on the scene for that. It's going to start between 4, and then the decision will be made at 4:30, so you can tune into any DawgNation platform to watch that. And if you need a reminder for yourself, then you can subscribe to our DawgNation YouTube page. That way you get the notification when we start filming, and also that goes for any of our shows. It'll update you anytime that DawgNation goes live. So make it easy on yourself by subscribing to our DawgNation YouTube page, and don't forget to tune in for the Caden Prothro decision this Saturday. Now we'll do Meme Machine.
Who's that calling down the track? Who's that bringing down the track? It's the Meme Machine, running back! It's the Meme Machine, running back!
kick us off this week, and I hate to kick a girl when she's down, but I can't help but not do it. Mine's going to be involving the Auburn Tigers.
Okay, we'll always take a shot.
Yeah, so I love a good quote tweet. We'll show it to you here. So the initial tweet was, the people were very kind, but this will be my last trip to Atlanta. And then the quote tweet says, Auburn football in 2017. It has been a rough year for the Auburn Tigers. I almost went with one, but there was too much language. I wanted to keep it Auburn centered, but it was basically like on a message board about an Auburn fan saying that the real problem with Hugh Freeze is that he's just a moron, and then goes into great detail as to why. So I hate to kick somebody when they're down, but when it's the Auburn Tigers, it's a little bit easier.
Oh, it's so much fun. He's getting so much grief, Hugh Freeze, for playing too much golf as
That's
well.
what it was, yes.
I love all of that as well. So, yeah, we'll always take a shot. Deep South's oldest rivalry on Meme Machine. It just feels right. All right, so I didn't do a funny one this week.
Okay.
I did one that I saw it. I was like, man, that's the favorite thing I saw on the internet this week. This one was a Instagram post, and it kind of got reposted onto a story by Jalen Walker. And when you look at it, it is Georgia football DGDs. It's all these guys working out together.
Love that.
And it kind of runs the gamut. Like starting on the left, or first off, Trayvon Walker looks like your Build-A-Player on NCAA football. Ty Ingram Dawkins, Jalen Walker. Christian Miller, who I think originally posted that, love seeing him out there with some of the old guys, old heads, right? CJ Allen out there working out, looks like Azeez Ojulari, and then Malik Herring. So what a cool group that is. But to see guys like Christian Miller and CJ Allen, who are on this year's team, and guys like Malik Herring and Trayvon Walker, who hadn't been on the team in a few years, to see them all working out together, that's a good sign for what we can expect from Christian Miller and a guy like CJ Allen. But I just love the brotherhood of seeing those guys all out grinding together in the sun. And there's like a soccer goal in the back. So this ain't at Georgia. These are guys off on their own, doing their own thing. That's a good thing.
I think that shows that the chemistry is a lot more than just what happens on the field. I mean, these guys spend so much time with each other, and they can still continue to learn things from one another despite not all of them playing at the same time anymore. So I think that's a sign of some good DGDs.
Yeah, and you got guys who are going to be teaching, like Trayvon can say, hey, here's what works in the NFL. Here's some new things that I've learned. Here's some other things. And the other part that makes me think of is the 2023 game against FSU when Kirby Smart said, yeah, our guys are playing for each other. It's legit. The brotherhood is legit, and so much so that it goes beyond once these guys graduate and go their own ways.
And playing for each other could be something that comes up at SEC Media Days next week. We could probably go ahead and clock that on our list. So in honor of SEC Media Days taking place, we thought we'd do something fun where, I mean, at this point, we've watched and set in on enough Kirby Smart press conferences to kind of know some of his little phrases and sayings and just habits that he has. So we each have 5 that we're going to try to predict, and then next week we'll do an accountability check after Kirby Smart speaks.
So this is all SEC Media Day, and it doesn't have to be Kirby.
No,
right?
no.
Anything we expect to see Georgia-centric.
Georgia related, yes. I went Kirby.
SEC Media Day.
I went all Kirby Smart, but you didn't have to.
Okay, are we going to bounce back and forth, or are you going to give me your 5? How are we going to do it?
Yeah, let's bounce back and forth.
I got a big board. If you take mine, I got a couple extra.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead and go first if you don't mind. And only because I have seen him do this to Connor Riley multiple times. Give me Kirby Smart ask a reporter to either repeat themselves or say that he doesn't understand the question. I feel like that happens each and every time. Definitely during the one that stood out to me was at the Sugar Bowl, and I felt so bad for the poor guy. But just because I've seen this happen to Connor, I am pretty confident in this pick.
Or he'll have you explain, like he did at spring meetings. He's like, what does the general manager mean to you? Asking a question back to the question asker is a very Kirby. What does general manager mean to you? What do you think the running game is? Or what, like, what does that mean to you? So he's done that. I can think of multiple guys on the beat who he's gone back with. So that's a very good one. Asking a question back to the question asker.
That's a better way of putting it.
It's very, very good. All right. I'll go with an easy one. Then Gunnar Stockton will be asked about his truck. At some point, he will have to talk about his old F-150 truck, and he'll give you an answer on it, and it'll be, something he probably had to give in the Sugar Bowl as well. He won't go into too much detail because that's Gunnar, but he will be asked. He will have to talk about his truck this week.
I didn't take it, but I feel like another lock in kind of that same ballpark as the Cows. How are the Cows doing?
Yeah,
update on the Cows.
Yes, I think Cows and truck for Gunnar Stockton. It's kind of like Stetson Bennett's cell phone. It's gonna be asked.
So this one is my lock. You could parlay this with something else, but I went back and did some research on this. So Kirby speaks on the 15th, which happens to be him and Mary Beth's anniversary. So I have in his opening statement statement, he's going to mention that it's him and Mary Beth's anniversary.
That's some deep dive. Drew Bobo was not invited to media days, but was a part of the wedding, right?
Well, he mentioned it last year because he went the day after, and so he made sure to include that yesterday was their anniversary because he always brings up his kids.
Yes, he always does a family update. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, the method is you just try to give the longest opening statement that you possibly can. That way, there's very little time for actual reporter questions. So give me him and Mary Beth's anniversary.
I love that right there. I'm going to go with the Kirby Smart as well. I believe that at some point, whether it's in the main room or the breakout rooms, Kirby Smart will mention, hey man, Marshall, they're the defending Sun Belt champions. This is not a warm-up game. We are not looking ahead to that trip to Tennessee. He will mention at some point they won their league or they're Sun Belt champions, something about Marshall because it's the first game of the year and how Georgia is not overlooking them.
I like that. I like that pick so much. I would, I feel like that
because they're going to say, Coach, last year you had Clemson to get ready for. What's it like not having that game? Well, these guys won their league. I don't know if you know this, and he'll drop that knowledge on you.
All right, so this one is more on the general side, but I feel like it's going to come up in a question about the SEC championship. So give me Kirby Smart defending the importance of the SEC championship because I feel like somebody's going to bring up, well, if you didn't win, you wouldn't have the bye week, and then maybe things wouldn't play out the way they did. And he's going to talk about how much it means to the players and how much it means to him, and how the goal is still to win an SEC championship. And it's just as hard to win the
SEC as it is a national championship.
Exactly. Yep. So give me him defending the importance.
Okay. All right. I'm going to kind of go out on a limb with this one. This one, we're going to go with one of the players again. I believe of the three guys coming, it will be Dalen Everett who will look the swaggiest. Ooh. Is swaggiest a word? We'll go with that. So Dalen Everett at some point will be asked about something he's wearing, the drip, right? So whether it's he's got a big Dalen Everett chain on or fancy shoes, because I can't really see it from CJ Allen, and Gunner's going to dress pretty normal and casual. So I'm going to say Dalen Everett because everybody at this event ask about, tell us what you're wearing. Oh, you're wearing sneakers with a suit. That's so cool. Tell us about it. So everybody gets asked about it. So I think Dalen Everett is the dog.
I like that because, no offense, we know it's not Gunner. Not the swaggiest quarterback that's ever been.
No, and if he could wear a baseball cap to this event, he would. I don't think they will.
But I feel like that's why a lot of people like him because you're going from having a super swaggy quarterback to somebody who just likes the simple things.
Yeah, they will not be asking Gunner about his new tattoos and what they mean and all of that.
All right, so I'm going to go a direct quote here because I feel like this is something that we've heard from Kirby Smart on multiple occasions, and I feel like SEC Media Days is the kind of place where a reporter's going to ask a question where Kirby Smart can tie this in. So we're going direct quote here.
Okay.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Ooh, yeah. Direct quote.
We're going direct quote.
That's deep. All right, then I'll have to respond with my own direct quote.
Okay.
3 words. Fire. Passion, energy. Will bit brought up. So those are our 2 Kirby Smart. He's going to say it at some point. The other one, and this is just a bonus for this one. When he gets tired of people asking him questions, he will give you a look, guys. Look, guys. And then he'll redirect to what he wants to answer. Look, guys, you guys are asking about NIL, the transfer portal. Look, guys. And he'll kind of, if he gets tired of people asking him the same question over and over, he'll give you a look, guys.
Yeah. Dang, fire, passion, and
yeah, it's right there. That's round 4. All right, so you got 1 more left, right?
I think it might not be a direct quote, but I imagine that the question comes as like something to do with playoff bids, and Kirby Smart gives, we're not concerned about that. Yeah. Something about keeping the main thing. Okay. Like I imagine it's gonna be a playoff question or something of that sort, and we're not concerned with that.
Yeah, he will be, because he got asked a lot about it at spring meetings, but spring meetings is the time you can ask Kirby about that. Mm-hmm. You can't ask him about, again, games down the road or what's happening postseason at this point. I think you're right. He has moved on from that. I have 2 good ones here. I'll give you one, and then I'll give you another bonus. So the one we will hear at SEC Media, this is actually going to come from somebody in the audience. I'm going to tell you a question that will get asked.
Okay.
There will be a question asked of Kirby Smart about a player who is not on the 2 deep. He's not even going to play this year, but he's from a specific town that this media member is from. And they'll say, can you tell us about so-and-so, so-and-so? And Kirby Smart will basically have to find something nice to say about the guy, even though he's going to kind of say he's not going to play this year. So it'll be a kid, or for instance, Coach, we're from Chattanooga, and you have a guy on your roster named so-and-so from Chattanooga. Can you talk about him? And it's a guy who it's a waste of everybody's time except for the guys from Chattanooga who are going to get to cover the guy in high school, which is fair. But it's just going to happen because it happens I've been at SEC Media Days for like almost 20 years now. It happens every year because I've been one of those local TV guys who needs a soundbite about my kid. But it's going to happen. So, hey, this guy is from Augusta. Can you talk about him? And it's like, this guy ain't going to play. For a while, Savannah had Michael Williams they could always ask about, or Chattanooga had, Lad McConkey they could always ask about.
Yeah.
But now it's going to be some guy who's like not even going to be a factor on the Georgia team.
That's when he gives like the great kid, making a lot of progress. Like that's how it always starts.
All right, so we're going bonus territory. Do we think there'll be some Carson Beck questions?
Oh.
Or are we kind of past it?
I don't think that it'll be directly by name, but I could see them doing like a very indirect reference to that situation. For my bonus ones, a very long unnecessary thanking of Greg Sankey.
Well, they got to make up after he called him out for the schedule last year. So he may have to go over the top on that. That usually happens in the opening statement. Totally.
And then I feel like we should do an over-under on his, because he gets 30 minutes of podium time.
Right,
like
at the front.
An over-under on the opening statement.
Before he takes his first question.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to have to talk about each guy he brings.
Yeah.
So he kind of does a biography about those guys, and here's the recruiting story on him, and here's what happened. It usually goes about 15 minutes, doesn't it? And he's got to give update on each of his kids, the 3 kids plus Mary Beth, plus Greg Sankey, plus state of the program, plus he'll call it the other one you probably could. He'll call out like another Georgia sport. So like Georgia had a tennis player who just won SEC Female Athlete of the Year, and he'll like give her a shout out. So the other thing Kirby will do at SEC Media Days, he will tell you that this year's team has nothing to do with last year's team. Yeah. They are 2 totally different things. So somebody will say, about that chip on the shoulder because you lost to Notre Dame. This year's team has nothing to do with last year's team.
I like that pick.
So that one will be there as well. The other ones, if we just run through the ones, I have some things I'm glad they're not asking about this year, but it means the offseason's been a little bit better for Georgia off the field, so that's good. Kirby will also be asked directly about a freshman, say like a guy like Elijah Griffin, and he will pivot and talk about the whole position group and will not answer the question.
He is because
he will not talk about he will not talk about a freshman individually. He'll say, we think Elijah has a lot of potential, but that whole group has a lot of potential, and he'll immediately get off. He will not have to talk about an individual guy.
Nailed it. Do we think that? And we'll wrap up really quick after
this.
Do we think that in talking about the kids that he'll mention Weston's perfect ACT score?
I think he does. If he talks about last year, I was going through last year's to kind of prep for this, and he talked about Andrew going to Cooperstown. I think we got to drop that in there. Yeah?
I mean, I would. That's the biggest
stage. You got to throw him some props.
All right, so we'll re-go over our 5 really quick. So mine is Kirby Smart ask a question back to the reporter. It mentions him and Mary Beth's anniversary. Defends the importance of the SEC championship. How you do anything is how you do everything. And then something about keeping the main thing. We're not concerned about all that noise.
Okay. And do you have mine written down? Because I can't remember which ones I did in which order.
Trucks or cows, the Marshall mention, Dalen Everett, swaggiest, fire, passion, and energy. And then what was your 5th one?
The 5th one was that the one, a player in the 2 deep?
Yep.
Somebody asked us, and this one will not happen in the main room probably. It's going to be like in the breakout electronic media room is what it's called. So we'll go through the transcript.
Should I do that with Sakobi White?
There you go.
Should it be me?
I'm from Rome. Can you talk about North Georgia player for just a moment?
So we will host an accountability check next week at Media Days, and we're going to have a ton of Media Days coverage. So that's just another reason to subscribe to our DawgNation YouTube page right now. We're going to be doing stuff all week. So many special guests, a lot of things you're going to want to be a part of. So with that, that's going to wrap up today's episode of DawgNation at Large. I just want to give Cody another thanks.
Yeah, hopefully Connor's
joining me this week
out there eating his hot dogs, sitting in the sun.
All right. We will see you guys right back here next Thursday at 7 o'clock.